Ron. So hi, I'm Mark from Winning Solutions, and David, introduce yourself to everyone here.
Hey Mark, my name is David Martinez.
Okay.
ESRI. And today what I'd like to show you is how you can use ESRI's map for Office to make a map to not only tell a story, but to enrich your data.
Okay.
To find new targets, to find new customers.
Talk really loud since we got a lot of background noise. Thank you.
So to find new targets and new customers.
Okay. And so this is a new product for you guys?
Yes, it's fairly new. It's about a year and a half old. We are in fact releasing a new release this week at our user conference, so I think it should be coming out today.
Okay. And so we're all familiar with the old big ESRI server product, and as I mentioned to you, we've done a deployment on that, and so we do a lot of access work. So now you're kind of bringing the power of ESRI down to some of the small business users who are just more in the Office platform and not up there on the big SQL server and that sort of thing. Is that right?
Exactly. What we're doing is we're allowing users to not only pull data directly from a spreadsheet, but you can obviously pull it from SQL Server, and allowing anyone to create maps and visualize that information.
And so you can do that then again from basically any Office application, so that would apply to Access or anything else that has a kind of a structured data format with addresses and that type of information that can be linked back to a map and Geodata type of thing?
Yeah, so it all starts with Excel. So it works in Excel. You can pull data directly from Access. And then you can, once you get that information prepared in Excel, let's say you want to give it to an executive. What you can do is you can take that same map, share it up in the cloud, publish it, and then that becomes available as a web map. You can take that same web map and then open it up into PowerPoint.
Gotcha. So it's right there in your presentation. Now you've got live map data.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so to kind of simplify ESRI down for some of our users who aren't as familiar with it as you and I are, my 2-second explanation of it is, in the old days people put pins on a map. And so you're the super modern, ultra cool, on steroids version of pins on a map.
Exactly. So I always like to think, everyone could put pins on the map these days. I think that's pretty much saturated now. But what is really the meaning behind those pins?
Right.
And how do you analyze that data?
Okay.
And plus one, you got to make it easy, right? And one, it's got to be shareable. It just can't live and die in one particular product. It's got to be able to be consumed by the masses.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're going. So I create something in Excel. Now I can share it with you. Let's say you have a computer in your, in a browser-based application. Well, now you can view that in there. The same map taken there. You can also view that in SharePoint or on your Windows phone. We're at the Microsoft conference or the Surface. Right. So taking that same information and distributing it to the masses. That's kind of where we're going with this.
Outstanding. Okay. Well, why don't you put it through a few paces here, and we'll watch you make it hum.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an existing connection to my own SQL Server instance here. I'm going to grab data from a SQL Server database. Okay. And basically what this is this is a fictitious company called Allwear.
Sure.
And we're a manufacturer of clothing. And then within here, we pulled some fact data coming from analysis services cubes. Okay. So we have invoice date, so we can track time-aware stuff. We have customers by IDs, what products they're buying, and obviously the locations. And then more importantly, we have things based upon the territory. So branch is considered a territory. And we have sales, which is revenue, and quantity, which is quantity bought. Okay. This is for Q1 of this year.
And although this data came out of a SQL server, it could have come from an Excel spreadsheet, it could have come from an Access database to an Excel spreadsheet.
Exactly.
And be ready to go in here just for the users who aren't into the big SQL server yet. But they're growing their business and they're getting there, but they're not there yet. Okay.
Exactly. So it can live in Excel, and then you can pass it on to distribute it. So now what I want to do now is I want to take information from this Excel spreadsheet and filter it so I can create a territory map. Because I have a job that I got to present how we did for last quarter.
By territory.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a pivot here, use a pivot table. I'm just going to grab the entire table here. And then I'm just going to grab the fields that I need to create that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab branch here. Okay. Let's pull that down. There we go.
Now, although this looks pretty easy, and it is pretty easy, for some people who, this is a little bit more than they want to do, we would just tell them that, as a company that helps people with ESRI, we would be glad to assist them with this process. So the way we would do that is, we would just go out and share up a desktop with them. If they, if they can do this by themselves, that's great. But if they get stuck, we provide the support where we can just remote onto their desktop and help them do this kind of stuff.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. I didn't know you guys did that. So another one is revenue is important.
Sure.
And then I want to look at quantity. So what I'm going to do here is just configure this real quickly just to make it a little more visually appealing here.
Great.
So I'm just going to go field settings here. I'm going to change this to territory. Like a type here. I'm going to hit OK. And then what I want to do is change these. So these are actually sums instead of counts. So I'll change this to sum. And then we're just going to give this a tag as Q1 revenue here. And then we want to look at our total items shipped, so we're going to change this to a sum as well. And this will be shipped items, because we want to look at our items that were shipped for last quarter. Okay, so now what I do is I have information by my territory regions, by revenue goals, and by shipped items.
Right.
Now what I want to do is create a map so I can visualize this information.
Absolutely. That's what you're all about, is getting all this data that's just a bunch of numbers sitting on a sheet and getting it on a map so people can really visualize it.
Exactly. So what I'm going to go to is we developed this plugin that sits into Excel.
Okay.
Now this plugin just simply inserts a map, so inserts a live map control into your Excel environment.
Okay.
Now this thing's expandable. Right, and then it's live, it's interactive, it's engaging this maps.
Exactly.
So you can see here. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to change the background drop to something a little more transparent.
Okay.
And this is going to be this light gray canvas map. Because really what I want to do is, it's not about the map, the background map. I want to highlight the features on the map.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and all you do is add Excel data here. Okay, and you can choose by a table or a name range. In this instance, this is a named table, or you can do a cell range, for example.
Okay.
So I'm going to select table range, and there you go. It detects what information exists within this worksheet. I want that pivot table there. So I'm going to select that, and then basically, if you have any kind of location type of information, address, city, state, zip,
right,
we can map that.
Okay.
So in this instance, what we did is I created a region called territory, so I can map these different regions here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this territory here, hit next, and then basically you just choose which columns to match with your location data. So in this instance, it's going to be territory, because we renamed that branch to territory.
Right.
And then simply what I do is hit add. What this does, it sends it to our service. Okay. And then it populates it. Okay, so now what happens is...
And that's where the magic really happens, because you've got the servers with the map data on it, and that you're bringing together with this person's personal data about their business. And then the idea here is that we're trying to go beyond the simple stuff that you can do in Google Maps. So you're bringing a lot more depth and power to this, and then you're also adding this tighter integration that Google doesn't have with Excel, right?
Exactly. And another thing that we do, so these are beyond points. If you notice, these are actual polygons.
Yep.
Okay, so I can click on one, for example, and what happens is it inherits all the data coming from the spreadsheet.
And those are your territories for this company, right?
No. These are. I'm sorry, not for our company, but for Allware.
For your sample company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're now working for the sample.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as you can see, it pulls up Southwest territory, revenue region, and shipped items. But more importantly, this map doesn't really tell a story besides it's bringing the information on the map. So what I want to do is create a thematic map, a color-coded map.
Right.
Showing sales by performance by regions.
Exactly.
So simply what I'll do is I'll just go to this thing called grouping. I'll select yes, and here we go. Q1 revenue. I want to do this by natural breaks. And let's change this color to reflect something else. And there we go. So here we go. Areas of green perform very well for us from a revenue standpoint.
Right.
Areas of in dark blue are our lowest producing revenues.
Okay.
So then within a matter of seconds, we created a map here, okay?
Right.
Okay, so more importantly, this just doesn't live and die in Excel.
Right.
When I share this map, now I can distribute it to the masses. Anyone can grab this with an ArcGIS application or even a web-based application. But more importantly,
so the customer could have this on their website or their intranet for their salespeople, so that they could sign in with a secure password and be able to see how their territory is performing.
Exactly.
That's really exciting.
You give control to the people who you want to see this information.
Gotcha.
But one last thing. This information here just doesn't live in here. You can push this information up to cloud, but then also you can pull information down from the cloud.
Okay.
So this technology is, pull push information here. So for example, let's say I wanted to add orders to this application.
Okay.
I want to add additional layers. So now what I want to do is I'm going to add orders based upon my territory. So what's going to happen is it's going to call out to the cloud, and it's going to add orders to here. There we go. And then what it should do is it should give me some clustering here. Let's go. That's taking so long, but okay. Let's see what happened here. There we go. And then from here, what we're using here is a technique called clustering, as opposed to dropping
just
1,000 points. Exactly.
Because that's what happens with Google, and that's what's wrong with Google is it gets saturated. Exactly. You get just so many pins in one area that you can't really see or get a good visualization of your data. So what you're doing is kind of creating these little hotspots or heat zones or whatever you want to call them.
Exactly.
But then you've got some numbers to go with them. So instead of there being so many pins there, you don't have an idea if there are 100 pins there or 1,000,000 pins there. You've got these numbers that go with each of those zones to be more informative.
Exactly. So now what we can see is, as someone viewing this, I could tell I have 448 orders in these areas, 447. So right straight off the back, I know I have strong orders in this area. And that makes sense because my dark green and light green in these areas.
Exactly. So then you kind of got a check there and you've said, hey, yep, this is matching up.
Right. So what if I wanted to discover why certain areas are underperforming?
Okay.
Now what we could do is we could use this thing we call geo-enrichment. And geo-enrichment is taking data from, within an existing 1 mile or 3 mile, whatever mile radius you define, or it can be in a drive time, and you're enriching your data with data from the geographic region. So let's say we have our customer, his buyer persona is, we know they spend between $35,000 and $75,000. That's our typical target of customer in income. So what if I wanted to identify customers from our store locations that fit that profile?
Well, that would be incredible, and you can't do that very easily or at all with Google.
Yeah, exactly.
So, if you've been using Google Maps for this type of thing or trying to do it, kind of talking to our audience here, you're probably having a hard time coming anywhere close, and I don't think you can do anything like this. And so this is really a whole new opportunity that ESRI is opening up by kind of bringing their power tools down to the masses. And as a company who's built on their really sophisticated developer platform, which you can do even more wild, sophisticated things with, and it's a wonderful platform, but it is very complicated to use. It requires a professional developer that's very trained and skilled in using this. But you can see here that this is something that you have a good shot at using, even if you're just an office person. And then if you don't, and you get stuck, you can call our company, Winning Solutions, and we'll help you with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go into the dark blue area, because these are the underperforming sales regions.
Right.
Okay, so as I go into this area here, I'm gonna, one of these clusters will start breaking out. Forgive me for my internet connection here.
You're
at a
fine.
conference.
Yeah, that's right.
So as you can see, these clusters break out. So I have all where this is a customer this, they purchased item 39064, they're in Garden Grove. So now what I want to do is, now what you're doing is you're empowering the user to use this thing called infographics. And this is another feature of geo-enrichment.
Okay.
This is going to query within a 1 mile area what people exist around the area. So I'm thinking of age, income, levels, it also could do ethnicity. So, and then you can configure the certain variables that exist around this parameter.
Right. So you've got a huge amount of demographic data while we wait for the server to catch up with you here.
Yeah.
That you've got stored, and this is really the power of ESRI, because you've reached out to, and generally these come from publicly available government databases and things like that, or other data sources that you guys have captured.
Yeah. So what we do is we have these demographers, and these are statisticians, economists that crunch all this data.
That are in your staff, not just the wonderful data that's out there for free, but this is better, higher quality data that's been curated by people at ESRI.
Exactly. And what they do is they create maps from that. Okay. And and then they come up with all the statistical and economics.
And that's the value of licensing or paying for this service from ESRI, is that you're getting much, much better quality data.
Exactly. So for some reason, this isn't working. Okay, there we go. So here we go. So we go. So now what you did is you empower the user to find, and this is configurable. This is within a 1 mile radius. That's the default. But now I can say, okay, the largest group here age is women, which is 40-44, and you can see it right here. Okay, 1 mile ring. And now what I could do is I could look at income levels. Okay, so this will bring up income level. So the high is 50 to 74. That's perfect for us. And if you look, that's 20% of what we want. And here's our next one, which is 15%. So that's a pretty good market for us.
Right.
So now how do I capture that data into my own data set?
Right.
So that I own it.
Right.
As opposed to going out to some service and then reading a report.
Right.
How do you do that? So that's very simple. What you can do is you can use this feature called Enrich Layer here, okay? And what this is these are all the different variables that you can select. Now this is at a global scale, so let me just peruse this real quick. You can see we have Brazilian spending, Denmark, Germany, household by income. Well, in this particular instance, I'm only interested in the United States.
Sure.
Okay, so then I'll select households by incomes. I could change the data here. If I want a 1 mile circle, if I want, within a drive time, you can give these parameters. But for, time constraints, I've already processed this data. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll over here to the right, and then here we go. So this is what the information comes back. So I highlighted our target persona here. So 20% of the population around that 1 mile buffer is between 35,000 and falls between 35,000 and 50,000 basically,
right.
Income bracket. And then 10% of that is between 50 and 75,000. So what we did here is we identified some particular customers to make sure we know we can sell our product in that area.
Right.
So maybe it's the way they're marketing the product, right? So we can help our retail stores find additional customers. So as I scroll down here, these variables change. Because what this does is this pulls all information for each different location.
Right.
Okay. So now what we did is we're empowering our data. Now this data is now owned by you, for example.
Okay.
Because we enriched it.
Right.
So now you can save this and publish it in the map. Or if this was in SharePoint, we support this thing called BCS, Business Connectivity Service. And basically what you can do is you can populate your own SQL Server database with this information.
Right. And even if you don't have SharePoint, we can show the customers how to get that into SQL Server if they have it. And then it's also important to remind customers on the lower end of the thing that Microsoft has a version of SQL called SQL Server Express. And that version is entirely free. There's no licensing cost to Microsoft for that. And in most cases, for a small business, that'll handle everything they need. We're able to serve about 95% of our small business clients on SQL Server Express. So it's really important to remove that barrier because a lot of people hear SQL Server and they go, I'm a small business, I can't afford that, I don't have an IT department to deploy that, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So now I got this. So I was the analyst getting this information. Now I'm going to give this information to my boss, Brig, who's driving me to get this information presented.
Sure.
So now what we do is we can go into presentation mode here.
Yep. So now we're in PowerPoint, and we've got our PowerPoint presentation up for our demo company called Allware.
Exactly. So I can hit this play button here.
And look, there's our map.
Yep. So what this should do is this queries a server. Now this map's loading.
Right.
Same map coming directly from Excel. I shared it.
Yep.
It's keeping private because you have ultimate control how you want to distribute that information.
Right.
And then now I have a live, interactive, engaging map. These territories should load. And then now my exec can come in here and click on this. He can hover over these clusters.
And talk about them and say,
exactly,
Mike, you need to sell more stuff. Get on the ball.
Yeah, get with the district manager.
Right. Here's how we're going to help you sell more. We must be falling down on the job because we're not enabling you to do your job. You bet.
And then now what he could do is say, okay, we identified the territory that's lacking in sales, but also more importantly, now we know our customer exists in the area because we enriched our data.
Right.
And that's the importance.
Right. So we can understand maybe there weren't anybody in that target demographic in that person's territory, and so that maybe now we've identified why they're not selling well or other things like that.
And that's just one example, right?
Sure.
And of course, you can do risk analysis with this. You can identify new segments. You can map any kind of information if it has any kind of location information.
Right, because you're all about maps and all about location.
Exactly.
Right. So then the other thing that this is going to do, if I understand it correctly, is if I come back and give this presentation again in a month, and Mike, who's fallen behind in that territory, has turned everything around in a month, the map is going to be completely different, updated with new data, and he's going to be in a green territory, and it's going to be great.
Exactly. So in a typical scenario, what happens is they'll take this data, they'll publish it in SQL Server.
Yep.
So that system's going to either it's going to be in a nightly dump from an enterprise system, or maybe they have live updates coming from that SQL Server instance. So let's say that data changes.
Right. Now, hang on, everybody. That sounds like a lot of big buzzwords, and that sounds really complicated. So don't get scared. We can help you do all of that stuff and simplify it down. Create a process that runs for you automatically. So although that sounds an overwhelming amount of buzz terms, don't fear.
Okay, great. And then what happens since that data is changing in SQL, it doesn't matter because there's a bidirectional communication between SQL Server and the map.
Right.
That changes, it becomes updated here.
Right.
And then now this blue territory hopefully change to a lighter blue or maybe even green.
Right. So I take it there was a little bit of setup involved in setting up the territories and things like that. So you kind of had some things ready to go for the demo, but that's where either people could figure out how to do that on their own, or they could contact a partner who works with ESRI to help them get some of those foundations laid so that things flow just like we've shown here in the demo.
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty quick. This setting of this territory was pretty quick.
Okay.
If they have custom territories, that's where someone like you can help them with that.
Right.
But if it's, you know,
so these
were counties or bounties or states, they could do that themselves because we have out-of-the-box territories.
Okay.
But come up with your own territory is certainly no problem.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Nope, that's fantastic. So basically, kind of what you're doing here is kind of bringing power that was once reserved for really big companies. You know, Fortune 1000, they've used this kind of stuff for years and years and years. That's why they're so successful, because they have this kind of information to target their sales. Mm-hmm. But now you're kind of democratizing these tools down and bringing them out for anybody who's got Microsoft Office and a small business.
Exactly.
That's really, really exciting.
We're taking it from remember the desktop user, right? There was the power user, the analyst, to the average user who maybe just needs to map some information to get a better understanding.
It might just be the sales manager, it might be the business owner, it might be the office manager, just someone who's a little bit talented with Excel and that sort of thing. You're giving them this demographic and map information that just isn't there in Excel to really enable them to create a rich and really powerful experience for their business.
And then share that information to help tell a story with their data.
Right.
And that's what we're doing.
Fantastic. David, thank you very much.
No problem.
You guys have a great show. We'll look forward to getting some of this deployed and helping people do this.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Okay.